Welcome to the Sports Club presented by the Jamaica Observer. I'm Daniel Blake. Today we'll be focusing on track, Grand Slam track to be specific. And to join us is a man who is no stranger to the track, sports content manager here at the Jamaica Observer, Andre Lowe. Andre, welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to make my debut. See if I can get a Messi style debut right now.
Hopefully 2022 Messi.
Yeah, 2022.
Yes.
Of course.
All right, so the Grand Slam track, which everybody has been hearing about, the first ever will be coming to Kingston, Jamaica at the National Stadium. So Grand Slam track, founded by Michael Johnson, which will see 4 track events. No, notice I didn't say track and field events. It is strictly track events, 6 categories, including short sprints, short hurdles, long sprints, and long hurdles. And what it is, it will have 8 challengers for each category. So 4 will be signed to Grand Slam track, and there will be 4 competitors who will try to essentially overthrow those. So far, we have 3 Jamaican athletes who have signed on, including Rashawn Clark, Rochelle Clayton, and Akira Nugent. World record holder, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is among some of the superstars there. The major thing about it is the prize money. So between 1st to 8th, it ranges from 100,000 for the winner. And if you finish in 8th, you get 10,000 compared to the Diamond League. Whereas if you finish 8th, you get 500 US. So that shows that Michael Johnson really cares about paying the athletes. So firstly, Andre, in terms of having an event like this, what does it say about track and field that somebody independent, in a sense, in terms of Michael Johnson, has to come on board to find an event like this to pay athletes and try and give some spark to the sport?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has a place in the whole track and field event ecosystem. And I mean, Michael Johnson might be the face of Grand Slam track, but he's not your average outsider, right? He's not even an outsider. You're talking about a highly decorated athlete on the track in those days. He has since gone on to lead a very successful and highly regarded commentary career. And of course, is now showing his mettle and as a businessman, right? So he has a certain perspective that he's bringing to the sport. He understands that track and field still is very marginalized. The athletes are not given the sort of support, whether it's sponsorship, prize monies, and just attention that they deserve. And he's trying to fill a gap. What he has promised is, well, more money, obviously, right? And that's a big deal for the athletes. More competition. And one point he made during the press conference on Monday was that you look at most of the marquee events, the 100 meters, the 200 meters, and how often the top name athletes are actually competing against themselves. I mean, we're hard to see it, right? Not too often you see a Fred Curley running against Noah Lyles or, Akeem Blake or Bleak Sevilla, whatever the case is. We're not getting a lot of clashes amongst the top athletes. We see that a lot in American football, a lot in football, a lot in basketball, and that's something that he believes drives interest in the sport, and he's trying to replicate that in track and field. So I think it's a really good idea. It certainly has a part to play, and I do have some concerns, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. But it's really good that he's starting in Jamaica and that he's bringing this to the market. It should be interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that I like and hate about it is the fact that though World Athletics, Seb Coe said, he welcomes the change, but at the same time, you ask yourself, why couldn't World Athletics have, done something similar? Because even with Alex Ohanian, with Athlos that he did last September with the all women track meet, and, they got paid heavily there. It's almost like, all right, why couldn't something like this have been implemented at the start? I know that they've tried it, moving away from the Golden League and the Golden Spikes to Diamond League, but still athletes over the years have complained about not being able to get quality meets, because sometimes athletes can pull out and you end up running against, the top athlete that they can find in the home country. And also the fact that you travel all this way around the world, while some athletes will get appearance fees, some will end up leaving basically just paying for their flight to get there.
Right.
And I see it somewhat as the comparison with cricket. I remember when T20 cricket started and ICC was like, 50 over and test cricket will always be there. And now we are at a stage where ICC blocks out an entire calendar for something like the IPL. So it's great to see that somebody like Michael Johnson and his investors have come on board to really invest in the athletes. But I'm worried that World Athletics has not come up with something to say, all right, we will help support this, or we will have something similar of our own, or try to revamp the Diamond League so more athletes can benefit.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to money, right? And the World Athletics, they'll tell you that there just isn't enough for them to offer the sort of monies that we're now seeing on the table for Grand Slam track. Let's not forget the Diamond League itself is actually private driven. So even though the World Athletics, they support it, they endorse it, which we haven't seen that endorsement really for Grand Slam track just yet. But the Diamond League is still being pushed and managed and executed by individual race promoters as well. So they certainly have a part to play. They'll perhaps tell you that their role is mostly development and that sort of stuff, because they're serving a much wider community, right? Grand Slam track is specifically built for TV audience, right? And that's a large reason why we're not seeing any field events in there, right? Michael Johnson did explain that. And they're focusing primarily on elite athletes. This is not a developmental exercise, right? This is an effort to get the world's best athletes competing against each other relatively frequently in a space or an environment that's built for the TV audience, right? And they're trying to bring innovation and stuff like that. But there is room for even other promoters and marketers to get involved in international track and field. And like you said, we would like to see the world's governing body playing a greater role in sort of bringing that sort of innovation to the athletes and to the sport. But the question is, can they actually do it?
Yeah, I only have...
Can they afford to?
Well, I guess we'll see in the coming years. I have one major concern, but you had said that you have some concerns around it. So I want you to tell me about those before I go into mine.
Well, where do I start? Okay, so obviously the field event athletes, they're not too happy about this. They're missing out on all these big bucks. Johnson did say that, listen, he's building something for TV. And the truth is that whenever an event is being contested, he wants that event to have the spotlight on it exclusively. So if it's men's 100 meter run, that is where all the attention is focused on, right? So the field events tend to take much longer time, right? And so for his model, it's just not going to work. And in fact, there's no consideration, it seems, for adding that in the future. He's just saying this is what we're doing right now, right? And maybe down the road, the opportunity will be there for some other creative and innovative businessman to create an event for the field event, right?
Grand Slam field.
Grand Slam field, who knows, right? But so that's just one concern, right? It is marginalizing a very important sector, and we have seen extremely high-level performances and competitions in the field events. You just have to look at the last Olympics, just to the javelin and other events, right? The other concern is, and I asked him this question, he didn't seem bothered, but I just don't know that at this point that they have enough star power to really pull in the casual view. Okay, Sidney McLaughlin, everyone. That's as big as it gets, right? But your tagline is only the fastest. You don't have the quote-unquote world's fastest man. And let's just admit it, the poster boy for track and field right now. And that's Noah Lyles. I know the Jamaicans don't want to hear this, right? But he has said openly that he's not ready to sign on yet until he sees what the TV deal looks like. You more have to make sure it's sustainable. I guess there's money in it for him or whatever. You can't tell a casual audience, especially in the US, which, let's be real, that's the audience they're looking for, that this is the most important track meet, it's the biggest track meet, and you don't have these names, right? You don't have a Sharika or Elaine or a Shelley. I'm just saying, some of the biggest names in track and field at this point are not involved, right? Yes, you have Benarick, you have Fred Curley, you have Alison Dos Santos, you have Paulina, you have very good athletes. That you have Rochelle Clayton and Rashawn, very good athletes who are going to, for track and field fans, guarantee a lot of interest and excitement. But for the casual viewers that they are targeted, I just don't think that at this point they have that star power. I think there are about 15 or 16 slots left to be filled. So let's see who they announce in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and they do have until April because the National Stadium meet is in April. I think in terms of the star power, I think that a lot of people are going to be a wait and see. Not necessarily like Noah who would want that type of guarantee that he will have some extra fame from it. I think people would want to see how it sort of works. So even going back to the whole cricket scenario, a lot of people were kind of tentative, like some of the biggest stars, in going to the IPL until they saw how it worked and how they benefited from long term. And a lot of our coaches here who have heavy influence over our athletes, they are still very old school, right? So I think to tempt somebody like Stephen Francis, you have to show that there's proper structure to it, and that it will be beneficial, not just money-wise, but in terms of even where athletes are in their season, leading up to the World Championships and in the future Olympics and so forth.
And in fact, I was told that they approached Grand Slam track, that is oblique civils, so Glenn Mills, and they have decided, or I decided at that point not to engage, just because they don't know how it's gonna tie into the season. Let's not forget too that the World Championships next year is all the way down in September. So coaches are still trying to figure out, how we go get athletes to, get to a level for these Diamond League meets and Grand Slam track and all these other meets and trials, and then have them sharp in September for the World Championship. So there's also that consideration too, And again, athletes like Noah Lyles and these other athletes who are on bumper contracts, already making a lot of money guaranteed on their contracts. They don't necessarily need the Diamond League or Grand Slam track, so they're not going to make a decision on appearance based on money. You're not paying them $1 million, are you? Right? They're making that decision based on how it's going to affect their brand. What happens if I lose to this guy tomorrow? How is that going to affect my marketability? How is this affecting my preparation towards the World Championships? Because at the end of the day, if these guys finish the year as a world champion or the Olympic champion, that's all their contracts speak to, right? They are satisfying, the bonuses, meeting the bonuses in their contracts. And so that's another challenge I think that the organizers of Grand Slam track will have. Notwithstanding, again, I do think it's a much welcomed initiative, very good for the space, but there are these little concerns and challenges that they're going to have to work through in the coming months and years and so forth.
Yeah, and to that point, Rashawn Clark yesterday in the video that we did, it was almost like he was kind of starstruck in the fact that he was explaining that, he wouldn't necessarily have to go all these Diamond League events, knowing that he can literally show up all season and get maybe a potential 400,000 US from it. So I think even if the bigger stars don't show up, I think people like Rashawn Clark, who are just outside of the top four. We know that people like Karsten Warholm and Alison Dos Santos and those guys. But when you think about those outside of the top four, maybe top 8 in the world, if they don't get that star power, those athletes will be looking and saying, well,
Absolutely.
might as well sign up because I can be guaranteed at least $100,000 for the year, which is more than I'd get maybe for 2 seasons of running.
Yeah, the paradox though is that, that's not what they're pushing for, right? They're saying only the best, the top athletes, the top events competing against each other. So, they're gonna have to find that balance. And I do think, honestly, right now, there are about 3 or 4 really elite athletes short of presenting it to the casual fans as a real spectacle.
Yeah. Before we have to leave today, we want to touch on this as well in regards to the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association and their kit deal. Earlier this year, we were told of a US $40 million offer from Adidas, whether the J3s would accept it or not. But you got some information that Puma is set to stay on for long term. So what have you been hearing over these last few days?
Yeah, so we broke that story yesterday that Puma has actually re-signed with, the J3 has actually re-signed with Puma. Very interesting, because let me just be clear, we don't know what Puma has offered in this new deal to the J3s. What we do know and what we have seen, and we have that contract in hand, Adidas offered an 8-year, $40 million US contract, right? So that's 6.4 billion Jamaican dollars. For a company like the J3s, that's always balling about money. This is a life-saving sort of offer, right? So we know that offer was on the table. It included a lot of things like monies for developing athletes, bonuses for world championships, Olympics, and other major international events, monies for projects selected by the president. I think like $2 million a year from that was going towards kits, and another 2.5 in cash per year. So the Adidas deal was quite impressive. We're not quite sure what Puma offered. We know that their previous deal, which expires this December, was close to $1 million a year. So chalk and cheese in terms of value, right? But what we're hearing and what's interesting is that the J3 is actually re-signed with Puma prior to the 6-month renegotiation period. So what happens is that they were allowed to renegotiate or negotiate with competing brands 6 months prior to the expiration of the existing contract, which would be June 30th, right? But our understanding is that even before that point, they re-signed with Puma, which means essentially before officially receiving the Adidas contract, they agreed to re-sign with Puma. So that's something that I'm pretty sure will be discussed in the coming weeks. There's an AGM in a few weeks' time, and I'm sure that's going to be a major topic. And we're eager to hear from the J3 top brass, about that decision and what went into that thought process, notwithstanding that Puma has been a major supporter of Jamaica's track and field for many, many years at all levels. And, for that association and support when we weren't this mega, program, we're forever grateful. But certainly, Jamaica's track and field program is worth far more than what they were paying in this existing deal. Now, the new deal, which becomes effective January 1st, I really do hope that it satisfies the needs and value of the J3s.
Yeah, a lot of fans on social media kind of questioning why they would do it, because obviously what Adidas was offering was huge, and we don't know what Puma is offering, as you said, but
not yet.
Knowing what sort of we've seen with Adidas and the Reggae Boys, I guess there's no real right or wrong, but do you think it's probably a mistake to not sort of go to the table with Adidas and say, okay, let's flesh it out, or even, go to Puma and saying, well, this is what was here, or that.
I mean, it's good business practice, right? I mean, I know what I value, but I need to know what the market is saying, right? And if company A is willing to offer me $1 and company B is offering me $10, I'm not saying that's the situation right here. I mean, even if I want to stay with company A, that $10 proposal is a really good leverage point that can be used to, bring up the offer from company A. And I think if in fact the contract was signed before the renegotiation period, that's not something I can support, because that's just poor business practice. And we can also talk about competitive fairness, but it's going to be interesting again to hear the explanation from Garth Gale and the rest of his administration.
Yeah. Remember to stay tuned to our platforms in print, online, and on social, because we will be keeping track of all this information. Andre, I really appreciate you joining.
It was fun.
That this is not just a solo appearance. Hoping to have you on much more. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sports Club presented by the Jamaica Observer. Remember to continue to watch on our YouTube channel and ensure to subscribe to our pages. Until next time, stay safe.